Amsterdam is a comparatively small city and good to explore on foot, as almost all of the key attractions are close together. However, expect rain at any time and much of the city centre is cobbled, which can be hard on the feet. Here are some ideas. Royal Palace is situated on the west side of Dam Square. It was originally a town hall, but built in Golden Age in 17th century. King Louis I of Holland in 1806 converted the town hall into a royal palace. These days it is a museum used by the monarch for entertaining and official functions during state visits. From the start, the Netherlands' own slave trade was no secret, as we can still see in the relief on the Royal Palace on the Dam. Visitors can admire the marble floors, magnificent paintings, delicate sculptures, plus an annual exhibition. Its many paintings and sculptures tell numerous stories from the time when the palace was still Amsterdam's town hall. Atlas, carrying the firmament on his shoulders, symbolizes Amsterdam's place in the universe. The Citizens' Hall is the heart of the building. In this room, the pronouncement of the verdict of a death sentence took place in public. The Dutch National Memorial is one of the most important European symbols that recall the immense tragedy of the Second World War. The obelisk on the dam's eastern side was built in 1956 to commemorate the Second World War fallen. A national icon in Amsterdam, the obelisk is a place famous amongst both locals as well as tourists who visit the city. Very few actually appreciate the underlying symbolism that is crafted on the pillar. Fronted by two lions, its pedestal has a number of symbolic statues. 4 males mean war. A woman with child symbolizes peace, and men with dogs symbolize resistance. Every year on the 4th of May, the ceremony of remembrance of the dead is held at the National Monument. Beginhof. This peaceful oasis is a Beginhof. Originally an almshouse for Beguines, who were devotee women who served the church. It was built in the 14th century. The pilgrims likely worshipped here before boarding the Mayflower for America. Today it is also the site of 2 churches. The Beginhof is the only inner court in Amsterdam which was founded during the Middle Ages. The buildings in the court are tall, characteristically Amsterdam-style townhouses, and most of them with facade from the 17th and 18th centuries. However, the buildings themselves are usually of earlier date. The ancient restored wooden house is famous as one of the 2 wooden houses still existing in the center of Amsterdam. While the Beginhof, one of the oldest residences in Amsterdam, is private property, visitors are welcome to roam around the courtyard and visit the chapels during opening hours. The Grand Hotel Amrath. The building that is home to the Grand Hotel Amrath started life as an office block for 6 shipping companies based in Amsterdam, hence its name as the shipping house and the maritime theme of the building's decoration. It is regarded as a shining example of the work of the Amsterdam School of Architects, as it was intended to serve as a practical, modern and functional office and also refer to the rich maritime tradition of the Netherlands. There are numerous maritime symbols incorporated into the design. Literally, from top to toe, the building is richly decorated with sculpture and ironwork reflecting the maritime nature of the business conducted by its occupants. Today, the shipping house is home to the Grand Hotel Amrath, who describe the building as perhaps the most beautiful structure built in the style of the Amsterdam School. Views of the canal or the waterway make an overnight stay here a special occasion steeped in history. The West Indisch Huis is the former headquarters of the West India Company in Amsterdam. In this building was ordered the construction of a fort on Manhattan Island in 1625, what would become the metropolis of New York. The building was built in 1617 and used until 1647 for the meeting of the directors of the West India Company. In 1977, the restoration was undertaken. In the courtyard was placed a fountain with a bronze statue of Peter Stuyvesant, governor of New Netherland. The building is used for conferences, weddings and other events. The West India Company was created to control the trade with America and the Caribbean. These plantations were hugely profitable, and that, unfortunately, is for one reason alone. More than 500,000 of Africans were enslaved and taken to these places so that money could be generated for rich merchants and their mother country. This period has always been known as the Dutch Golden Age, but this terminology is now brought to question as people address the inhumanity and brutality that it was based upon. The East India House is an early 17th century building in the center of Amsterdam. The Dutch East India Company seated in the original building until its dissolution in 1798, after which the Dutch colonial administration took seat here for the next 10 years. The original building was torn down around 1890 to make space for the current neo-Gothic building, which now houses the Humanities Faculty of the University of Amsterdam. The Dutch East India Company played an important role in the history of the Netherlands. It brought wealth to the lowlands, leading to the Dutch Golden Age. This company became the first multinational in the world. It is believed to be the largest company to ever have existed in recorded history. The Dutch East India Company started off as a spice trader. For decades, this concern dominated the global spice trade, transporting spices using large ships. The East India Company sent many expeditions to the Orient to bring back silks, spices, herbs, salts, copper and other riches that fueled Amsterdam's Golden Age. The locations where the East India Company traded stretched from South Africa to Japan. The East India Company was seen as the international arm of the Dutch Republic and the symbolic power of the Dutch Empire. But the trade of spices and other goods came with a lot of violence. The Dutch, Spanish, Portuguese, English and French fought hard to conquer colonies and to defend trading routes. Therefore, the trade ships were also warships. A Second World War military war grave cemetery is situated in Margraten. It is a village 10 kilometers east of Maastricht. The cemetery is the only American one in the Netherlands. It contains a constantly varying number above 8,000 war-dead citizens of the USA. The southern part of the province of Limburg was liberated exclusively by US forces in September 1944. Today, people from Holland and all around the world still arrive bearing Remembrance Day bouquets and wreaths to lay among the headstones. Visiting the Anne Frank house is one of Amsterdam's most profound experiences. Her story is famous because it is very detailed, emotional and personal. Her red-plaid diary that she received on her 13th birthday mirrors World War II. She dreamed of becoming a famous writer and journalist. Entering the secret annex where the teenage girl and her family desperately hid from the Nazis for over 2 years, intimately personalizing the war's catastrophic effects. Inside the lowest levels, present history using interactive technologies, passing the bookcase that swings open on hinges. These 2 floors below the attic and above the office kitchen seem frozen in 1942. Anne's room was cramped and bare. To brighten things up, she pasted pictures of landscapes, movie stars on the walls. The former hiding place is unfurnished, as Nazis took everything out during the war. Anne's father wanted to keep it that way. Housed in Rembrandt's former home on lively Jodenbreestraat, this evocative museum provides an unparalleled insight into one of the Netherlands' greatest artistic geniuses. The museum occupies the 3-story canal house, where the artist lived at the height of his success, working on major commissions such as the Night Watch and running his painting studio. Rembrandt worked in the house between 1639 and 1656, when it was sold to compensate his creditors due to not being able to pay the mortgage when his work fell out of fashion. Over the years, the house fell into a state of severe dilapidation before it was decided that it would be turned into a museum. It underwent restoration to bring it back to its former glory. This museum was officially opened by Queen Wilhelmina in June 1911. It shows the artist's collections of drawings and etchings. Nemours is a science center in Amsterdam. In this museum, for young and old, the world of science and technology can be discovered. Visitors are taken into the world of those everyday things that are still very special. Discover, for example, how bridges work, why you sometimes see things that are not there, and how lightning is created. Interactive exhibits, chain reactions, and exhibitions about technical developments can be seen. Physics is everywhere. The colors of a rainbow, a crackling sweater, and the difference in voice pitch in men and women. Here can be seen immediately how it works. We are leaving Amsterdam for another interesting town. Leiden is just 40 minutes from Amsterdam. Leiden has benefited from its preservation as the city where the Mayflower pilgrims settled before migrating to the New World. Because the historic center escaped bombing during World War II, visitors can now get a real sense of what life in pilgrim times was like. Rembrandt, born in Leiden in 1606, was educated in the city and took art classes in the area. The separatist community might well have passed him in the street as they went about their daily lives. It was a city of free thinkers, relative religious tolerance, and a long tradition of offering shelter to the dispossessed. Following their escape from England, the Mayflower pilgrims carved new lives here, bought land near Peterskirk and built houses. Did you know that Thanksgiving, which the pilgrims are said to have introduced when they established the Plymouth colony, has its roots in this town? Well, the inhabitants of Leiden celebrated the lifting of the siege with an annual Thanksgiving service and distribution of food. The pilgrims would have experienced this each year that they resided in Leiden, and they took it over to America. Historic center of Leiden is like stepping back into the 17th century. Who were the pilgrims? They were Protestants who wished to separate from the Church of England and to establish their own independent congregations where they would have the freedom to worship as they saw fit. Persecuted for their beliefs by King James I, they sought refuge abroad. Led by the pastors John Robinson and Richard Clifton, and accompanied by the elder William Brewster, they arrived in Amsterdam in 1608. The group led by Robinson and Brewster decided to leave the city and travelled some 30 kilometers south of Holland's second city, Leiden. Robinson's group could not establish their own church because the separatist movement was not a recognized denomination. Some of those who understood Dutch attended occasional services at the Dutch Reformed Peterskerk. The Gothic Peterskerk was originally Catholic church, later converted to a Protestant church. What is interesting, chiefly for the music fans, is the oldest playable organ in the world that is in this church, although pilgrims did not use it, as John Robinson called it the devil's bagpipes, because music was considered too frivolous. On the outside of the baptistry there is a bronze plaque, and another is inside in John Robinson's memory. Another plaque on the outside of the baptistry records the names of members of the group who died in Leiden. The chapel in the Peterskerk, where John Robinson is buried, is home to a permanent exhibition about the life of the Mayflower pilgrims in Leiden. After having entered the American Pilgrim Museum, you will find yourself in the oldest, still preserved house in Leiden. It is original dwelling where one of the Mayflower group lived. It offers a good feel for what the houses might have looked like. This property was built between 1367 and 1370. It's not a usual museum with its artifacts displayed behind glass. There is a collection of period furniture and artifacts. There are kitchen implements, old books, clothing, toys, a lovely old bed built into an alcove, and beautiful delft tiles around the fireplace, and maps from the 16th and 17th century. We are entering Jan Pissinhoofje, where John Robinson's memorial is. The house now standing in Leiden was rebuilt in 1683 as an almshouse named the Jan Pissinhof. The poorer members of John Robinson's congregation lived in 12 little houses arranged rather like the little dwellings of the almshouse. Thomas Blossom and his wife lived here. They were ancestors of American presidents George Bush, Sr. and Jr., and Barack Obama. Here is the first memorial to the pilgrims in Leiden, located on the outside of the Jan Pissinhof, and reads, "On this spot lived, taught and died John Robinson." Does it mean that he did not get to America? He never reached America. He died before the planned emigration to America that should follow Mayflower. He is buried in a chapel in the Peterskerk. This is the place where William Brewster, the spiritual leader of the Plymouth colony, lived and operated the first Pilgrim Press Company. Today, the street where he lived is called William Brewster's Stake. Brewster's house has nearly disappeared through later enlargement, but a blank end wall can still be identified by the contrast of its bricks with those added later. Brewster set a type here for several of the books he clandestinely published in Leiden. They distributed material promoting separatist theology. The alley where Brewster lived can still be visited. It is very close to the Peterskerk. The Vliet is the spot the pilgrims left Leiden from. The question remains why they decided to leave for the great unknown of a new world. Group leaders were concerned that the community would lose its religious and cultural identity. Visitors to this spot on the Vliet will now find a commemorative statue on which the names of the Mayflower pilgrims are listed. It symbolizes the uncertain step taken by the pilgrims in traveling on the New World. When the pilgrims left Leiden in 1620, they passed under the Vliet Brook. Since the pilgrims came to America, no fewer than 9 of their descendants have made it to president. all have a Leiden pilgrim ancestors. John Quincy, who studied in Leiden, became the 6th President of the United States. John Adams went to live with his family in Amsterdam in 1780 as an American ambassador. He was looking for a good university for his 2 sons, and that was, of course, Leiden. At the end of 1780, these sons moved to the student dormitory at 45 Langebroek in Leiden. Rembrandt was born in Leiden on July 15, 1606. He spent his youth here, went to school and enjoyed some training as a painter. For those of you hoping that you would find some little cozy medieval Dutch house here, sad news. The house where Rembrandt was born in was demolished over a century ago. There's now only a gable stone reminding you of the birth of the Dutch master here. In the young Rembrandt studio, the 17th century house at Langebroek, 89, the Leiden, Rembrandt spent his younger years learning how to draw, paint and make etchings. There's a little statue and portrait of the master here, tastefully done, located at the Langebroek in a classic Dutch house.